I quickly want to cut across to Suhana and Darshan. Suhana, were you participating in these protests? Suhana, is samay kya chal raha hai? How did these protests start? What can you tell us, Suhana?
So I would not say we were part of the protest entirely, but we, as the youth had shown solidarity, it started at 9 a.m. and was supposed to end at 5 p.m. However, till 9 till 12, I arrived there around 12:30 to 1, and it was a very, very peaceful protest, Mr. Gaurav. And honestly, to tell you that people were actually singing, dancing, and there was music being played. It did not start out as the way it has been portrayed, because it started out very peacefully and the agendas were very clear from the get-go that the youth is not going to be violent. We had no weapons, quite frankly, nor did we come with that intention, I think. And to portray that this tag that Gen Z did all of this, I think would be very false. I feel it becomes very easier to control that sort of narrative. However, there
Okay.
were people from all walks of life, from all demographics. Actually, you had businessmen to actual people, activists, people who have actually been really affected by the social media ban in the country, whose livelihood also depends on such digital apps to keep us connected to a more global audience.
So who's
However,
leading
I
these protests? Who is leading these protests? How did everyone come together? How did lakhs of people assemble, not just in Kathmandu, but across Nepal, Suhana?
I think what happened is when the ban started, right, Gaurav, all the entire audience was only watching TikTok. And when TikTok, if you can see, the entire South Asian continent right now is talking about the corruption and so many things. If you see in movement, even in Indonesia, was something very similar. Where people are speaking out about. Countries and their poor policies regarding governance and creating economic stability. So, in that sense, I would say that this was an entire frustration that was much more wider than just your social media ban. It was holding a government accountable for not being able to, build sustainable policies. At the same time, also not, there's so much tax that is being paid. Where is it going? There has been no reform from the. We understand we're an old country, but the policies are new. However, there has been no
Yes.
support that has been shown.
Okay. Darshan and Suhana, stay with me.
So it
Darshan,
was communicated.
are you satisfied just with the resignation of the Home Minister? We are just told the Home Minister has resigned, or are protesters now demanding that even Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli should resign?
No, look, as far as I understand the mindset of the Gen Z generation, I think the whole government, I mean, this protest is one aspect is the ban of the 26 platforms, right? But another aspect is the Gen Z or this generation have failed us. That's the conclusion. So it's about the whole systematic change that the youth of Nepal see at the moment.
Okay.
So that's
So,
not enough.
okay, so Home Minister resigning is not enough. Entire government should resign is what protesters want. But then who will replace them? What is the system that will come? Because anyway, it's a coalition government where you have the left and the right, virtually operating together to remain in power.
Right, I mean, right now, I mean, there is so much confusion that's going around in the minds of people who went in the protest today. So the youths are seeking for someone, some leader to and I think I don't know whoever that could be, but the entire government, the prime minister, I think should KP Sharma Oli should resign from his position. I've also heard that they are calling for 11 p.m. like security meetup has been just floating around in the surface in the internet. So I don't know like what gonna happen, but the tragic death that we have seen in the peaceful protests,
Yes.
it's crazy, it I couldn't even believe my eyes, and that I've seen today in
Darshan,
the
stay with me,
protest,
and
as
Suhana,
a
stay with me.
journalist.
General Chauhan, you've served in Nepal, you speak the language, you understand the people. So is this a protest on a social media ban, against corruption and incompetence of the KP Sharma Oli government, or are the youth very frustrated with the way Nepal was led by the previous generation, and perhaps the social media ban was just the last straw that broke the proverbial camel's back?
Good evening, Gaurav. Thank you for calling me for your show. Well, I agree with you. The issue is, of course, the fact that there is a lack of governance in Nepal. This lack of governance has been going on for the last almost 20 years. There's been absolutely no development in Nepal, and there's a huge lot of corruption. But the issue about these riots or the disturbance is that no leader has emerged. So there is no political ideology that has come up. It might happen after a little while, a few more days, and you might get a leader or with an ideology. But at the present moment, it's not that. The fact that the Home Minister of Nepal has resigned shows us that probably Nepal Congress is likely to break this very uneasy coalition with KP Sharma's Oli's Maoists. So there will be a fracture in the governance. There will be a breakdown. I'm certain that in the days to come, KP Sharma Oli might have to resign because he will simply lose power because the Nepal Congress will break away. Now, the issue is that I've seen these disturbances in the past, in 2005,
Yes.
2006, 2007, when you had come there earlier, when I was the defense attaché there. These disturbances were there. But at that time, there was a clear leader that was emerging.
Yes.
Prachanda was leading the Maoists,
Prachanda.
and there was a very clear idea that who and what is going to happen. At this present moment, that is not there. Now, there are three questions in my mind. If there's
Okay.
not there, who's starting it? That's the first issue. Is there money that is coming out from somewhere else? That's the second issue. Even the Gen Z frustration. As you said, you asked this question from one of the young people there about who is coordinating this? How can uh, all 77 districts have disturbances without coordination?
That's a very
So
important point. And stay with me, General. Let me take this to Ambassador Sikri, because we've seen this even in Bangladesh. And Ambassador Sikri, spontaneous protests or social media actually being exploited or harnessed to create that atmosphere of unrest in society, because a lot of protesters through the morning have been talking about this video which shows comparison, the tough lives that youngsters lead in Nepal compared to children of political leaders who are leading lavish lives overseas. And this angered a lot of these youngsters. Sadly now 20 are dead, more than 250 injured.
Yeah, well, I think there are two or three distinct aspects to what has happened, and these are issues entirely internal to Nepal. First of all, it did begin as a very peaceful protest. So the excessive use of force by the government, by the police, and then the army being called in, and the people having died. So many people have died, and so many more are injured. This has caused a huge amount of anger, no doubt about it. Second aspect is that the issue of the 26 companies that you've spoken about, the social media companies, whether YouTube or Facebook or X and so on. So they were told by the government that they should register themselves, and the hint was that they should also pay taxes. Now this is a huge issue, not only in Nepal, but this is a huge issue everywhere about these 26 companies, the social media companies, not even registering their presence, but wherever they are registered, whether they should pay taxes or not. So this is another huge issue, and whether this protest is against the banning of the companies and the fact that they're being asked to pay taxes, is this something that has been instigated on that front? So obviously the demand is that the social media companies should be reinstated, and because it has affected so many jobs among the Gen Z.
Livelihoods.
The third
Yes.
livelihood, and the third issue, of course, the Nepo kids, the nepotism. This is a governance issue, a huge governance issue, highlighting the corruption that is being charged. And of course, social media is the place where all these corruption allegations are aired, and they are free to mention these on the
Okay.
social media. Many
So I have
other
Sohana and Darshan who are back with me on the broadcast. I want to bring in Professor Brahma Chilani before I bring in our political guest from Nepal. Professor Chilani, 20 dead, 250 plus injured. Does this indicate not just competence at multiple levels of governance by the KP Sharma Oli government, also the inept handling, as these youngsters say, of the social media ban and these protests? Because they're saying for compliance, more time could have been given. The moment you ban them, students lose their livelihoods, youngsters lose their livelihoods, and they're unable to communicate.
You're absolutely right. Oli in the past has accused India of backing protests against his government. This time, the protests against his government, mainly by the young, have been spontaneous. And the fact that the authorities have used excessive force and there have been so many killings, that in turn has triggered nationwide protests against Oli's government. Two things stand out. First is that social media is very important for Nepali families to communicate with their relatives who are working abroad as migrant workers. So Nepal has a significant portion of its population living overseas. According to official Nepalese data, about 7.5% of Nepal's total population lives abroad. And social media platforms are essential to communicate with those who are living overseas. So sudden ban on all these popular social media platforms, many of them being used merely for communication, has created a national crisis for families whose relatives are working overseas. So that in turn has also contributed to nationwide protests. But there are two elements to Oli that we should not forget, that ever since he returned to office in July last year, his pro-China tilt and his government's increasingly authoritarian actions both have become apparent. And the ban on social media platforms shows that.
Yes,
Excuse me.
the manner in which 20 students were targeted and killed is appalling. And I want to bring in Rajendra Mahato, former Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal, joining us on the show. Mr. Mahato, is KP Sharma Oli, when he says he's offering to step down, is that a solution or is that posturing? And with the resignation of the Home Minister, will students go back home and leave the streets?
ऐसा है कि युवाओं के शांतिपूर्ण जो प्रदर्शन हो रहा था उसके ऊपर केपी ओली की सरकार अंधाधुंध गोली चलाई है और दर्जनों लोग मारे गए हैं और सैकड़ों लोग घायल हैं। तो इतना बड़ा अपराध, इतना बड़ा दमन, इतना बड़ा अत्याचार शांतिपूर्ण मूवमेंट के ऊपर करने का हक इस सरकार को नहीं है। लोकतंत्र का धज्जी उड़ाने का काम, लोकतांत्रिक मूल्य मान्यता को अपहरण करने का काम ये सरकार कर रही है। वैसे भी अब सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर प्रतिबंध लगा। क्यों प्रतिबंध लगा? इसलिए लगा कि यहाँ की जो सरकार है, लोकतंत्र में ऐसी सरकार बनती नहीं है। बिना कोई संकटग्रस्त अवस्था हो देश तो ऐसा होता है। फर्स्ट पार्टी और सेकेंड पार्टी, पहली पार्टी और दूसरी पार्टी, नेपाली कांग्रेस और यूएमएल कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी मिलकर के सरकार बनाई। देश में लूट तंत्र भ्रष्टाचार जो युवाओं ने जब आवाज उठाया, ये तो यहाँ भ्रष्टाचार मतलब दोनों हाथ से लूटने का काम हो रहा है। तो लूट तंत्र जो भ्रष्टाचार जो चरम सीमा पर है, उसका विरोध नेपाल की जनता कर रही है। उसका प्रयोग सोशल मीडिया के मार्फत कर रहा था। सोशल मीडिया का भरपूर प्रयोग हो रहा था। तो एक तो सरकार ऐसी सरकार बनी जो लार्जेस्ट दोनों पार्टी मिलकर बनी कि अब उसको हम अपने अपराध को छिपा सके, अपने करप्शन को छिपा सके।
ठीक।
और सोशल मीडिया का प्रयोग जो हो रहा था उसको नंगा करने का, उसको ही बंद करने का, उसको भी छिपाने का ही काम हुआ। तो
ये आप बड़ी बात कह रहे हैं। आप पूर्व उप प्रधानमंत्री हैं उस देश के, नेपाल के। मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूं कि अगर केपी शर्मा ओली इस्तीफा दे, त्यागपत्र दे, तो क्या ये आग शांत होगी? और अगर ऐसा होता है तो क्या फिर चुनाव होंगे या कोई और सरकार बन सकती है?
ऐसा है, जब तक पार्लियामेंट रहेगा तब तक सरकार बनने की संभावना रहता है। तो इसलिए ये तो पार्लियामेंट सरकार बनाती है, तो एक सरकार जाती है, दूसरी सरकार आती है। तो ये तो कोई बात नहीं। ये तो
ठीक 2
ये
मिनट मेरे
तो
साथ रहिए. Dr. Jaiswal also joins us, and Dr. Jaiswal, KP Sharma Oli is blaming extremists. He's also blamed in the past outside forces. So which are these outside forces at play that KP Sharma Oli talks about, sir?
If you know the history of KP Oli, for all his excuses, he always see the outside forces. In the past, it was initially India. I don't know what he's hinting at the moment. He has just returned back from China, where he met Putin,
Yes.
North Korean president, Chinese president. So I don't know where he's hinting at. Probably, maybe one can speculate that probably his new alliances with the autocrats from China, Russia, and North Korea might be the one fear. I think it's probably his own fear because he has just returned back from China. So he's maybe coming from that fear at the moment. But I don't think there is outside forces at the moment, because what are the students asking for? Social media ban removal. You don't need outside forces to come to that slogan. You know, how does it matter to the outside forces when the social media ban is there in this country? So corruption and social media ban removal was the two demand of the student in the morning. But since all that happened, now they have new demands. That is one, the resignation of Home Minister, which I believe he has resigned, and another, the resignation of the Prime Minister, which we are yet to expect. As per the new media reports, Prime Minister has refused to remove the social media ban, though his coalition partner Nepali Congress has requested him to do that.
Yes.
But the whole process here is like, what led this movement? I think it's the frustration among the youth, because we have unstable government. In 10 years, we have 10 prime minister. The same three people has been moving around in a musical chair, where they have not addressed the demand of the people. So they want the change of those three leaders. You know, people are happy with the parties that they present, but they don't want the heads to be there in the power all the
So
time.
let me get Sohana and Darshan, the youngsters, on this panel. Sohana, will people be satisfied just with the Home Minister's resignation, or after the killing of 20, young students and protesters and 200 plus being injured? Is it that this entire government has to go, and if they go, who replaces them? That uncertainty will not be very good for
I
Nepal.
can't hear you.
Okay. So will protesters be happy just with the resignation of the Home Minister, or the Prime Minister has to go?
See, I definitely, at the rate the events unfolded today, I definitely don't think the youth or the country at this point is going to be happy with just the Home Minister's resignation, Gaurav. I personally, if I had to tell you exactly what we saw, it was a complete turn and shift of events from what was the actual agenda to what it actually became. And I think at this point we have understood the way everyone is so frustrated with the governance. And I definitely don't think the youth is going to just be satisfied with Mr. Oli. Just with just the Home Minister resigning. I think we demand something much more greater.
Okay.
And
Ambassador Sikri.
accountability that is much more wider, I would say.
Okay. Ambassador Sikri, Bangladesh also saw student protests, and students were leading these protests against Sheikh Hasina. Later, it was discovered that radical Islamists were operating from behind the scenes. Now, is that an apprehension even in Nepal, that students, in fact, if you see those images, some of them are in uniform, school uniform, participating in these protests? Social media is the platform where the message is being spread, when to meet, where to meet, how to take the protests forward. Could this be orchestrated, harness the discontent amongst the youth?
Well, I think there certainly has to be some amount of coordination. And as our colleague from Hami Nepal indicated, that, there is this element has to be there. So there is some coordination. There are some organizations. I would like to draw an immediate comparison perhaps with what happened in Sri Lanka, because there you had a protest focus on the economic situation in the country. And I think what is happening on the streets is because the people have lost their jobs with the social media having been banned. So this is a lot, and there's a lot of anger with corruption, and the social media has been reflecting the corruption and so on. So I think this is a great anger against the corruption, against the malgovernance, the nepotism and so on. I think this is the prime purpose. And the question is now that will this anger be satisfied by the change of government, and will they go back to the democratic structure, which is holding proper elections, or reconstructing the government within parliament, as a colleague from the Rashtriya Mukti Party has said? That's one question. I think the situation in Bangladesh was entirely different, where the students, it is very clear, were being used just as a shield. It was the Jamaat-e-Islami, it is the Jamaat-e-Islami that is very much behind the situation there, and it was based on a very well-planned regime change operation. Now, in this case in Nepal, using the pretext of the social media ban, is there a very well-planned regime change operation which is coming into force? I think we will know that in a day or two when we see how these protests go on. But certainly, I think there is the need for the government, not just for the Home Minister to resign, but for the government to talk to the protesters, to actually understand the issues, and to see whether a solution is possible. That, okay, even if you restore social media, but the problem of getting the companies to register, that will remain. There are many ways in which it can be handled, and I think the government's handling of the issue is going to be critical. Absolutely. Are they just
Professor
going to
Chilani,
yeah.
okay.
Are they going to maintain
Professor
the
Chelani, in a situation like this, you would also want big tech to comply with local laws of the land, because big tech may think that they can, ride roughshod over local laws, not appoint a compliance officer, a grievance redressal officer, a local contact person, and yet get revenues out of that place.
But you have to look at Oli's record. After he returned to office, one of his first actions was to lift the ban on TikTok.
On TikTok.
Now look at the irony of it. He becomes Prime Minister in July 2024, and soon thereafter he revokes the ban on TikTok. And now he's facing deadly protests over banning Western social media platforms. One has to keep in mind one important aspect about Oli. First, for China, a weakened and isolated Oli government reliant on Chinese support could deepen Nepal's dependence on China, particularly for trade and security. This would be a major strategic win for China in its encirclement strategy against India. So certainly China is not seeking regime change in Nepal, certainly not. Nor is India. In fact, Oli's contribution has been to reduce India's influence in Nepal. That will be his legacy. He has worked systematically to control India's influence in Nepal.
Including the Agniveer.
India faces a dilemma. Supporting the democratic process risks alienating the government led by Oli. The government is already alienated, but further alienating Oli's government may not be in India's interest. But remaining silent could be seen as tacitly approving Oli's crackdown and compromising India's own democratic principles. So simply put, the Nepal situation for India is both a humanitarian concern and a public relations challenge. And as I said, the ongoing crisis comes at a time when Oli has managed to cut India's influence in Nepal.
And which is a cause for grave concern. Absolutely. Let me take that to General Chauhan. General Chauhan, as India's defense attaché to Nepal, you'd interact very extensively with the serving soldiers from Nepal in the Indian Armed Forces, in the Gurkha Rifles, with the veterans and with their families. So apart from this very strong civilizational link that we have with Nepal, this was also this military to military link that KP Sharma Oli government by saying we will not send Nepalese soldiers for Agniveer, in a way cutting his nose to spite his face. It was trying to block, as Professor Chilani puts it, India's links with Nepal.
Absolutely, Gaurav. What should be absolutely clear about our relationship with Nepal is like this: that there are more than 130,000 Indian Army or Indian Armed Forces pensioners who live in Nepal. Now, of these 130,000 Indian Armed Forces pensioners, all of them are opinion shapers in their villages. And at least 6 people of these of every family depend on this pension. So that's about 10 lakhs to 15 lakh people who are opinion shapers in their villages who are actually directly gaining from Indian pensions. In addition to this, there are about 38,000 Nepalese origins serving Indian Army soldiers. And we used to recruit about 1,000 soldiers every year. KP Sharma Oli obviously wanted to reduce this, and therefore he stopped the Nepalese recruitment into India, citing and the example of a change in recruitment rule, which was incorrect, the Agniveer policy. So, because of taking away 1,000 vacancies from the youth of Nepal, he's actually increased their unemployment quota by a huge number because a very
Yes.
large number of Nepalese youth used to come for recruitment into in the Indian Army's Gurkha regiments. These are the issues. KP Sharma Oli, I agree with Brahma Chelani. KP Sharma Oli has moved step by step to reduce India's influence. And not just influence, India's friendship, India's committed friendship to Nepal. India has always looked, and having been a part of the embassy there, all we look for is a stable Nepal because
Oh,
Nepal is critically
absolutely.
very strategic to us. And we
You
do
know,
not want an increased Chinese influence there. So we want Nepal to be with us. We want Nepal to understand how
Darshan,
critically
is that
strategic
a
it is.
fear? Darshan, is there a fear that China's influence could increase in Nepal? Both you, Sohana, and Mr. Jaiswal, one after the other, the little time that I have on this part of the show, that a situation like this could be exploited by outside forces in Nepal? Darshan?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, there is a lot of confusion then what's going to happen. But of course, Gaurav, since Nepal lies in this very strategic position, I truly believe that these kind of influence would definitely play behind the bars. No doubt on that. Uh, but also, I mean, the point that we should not miss here is that it's not only about 26 social media ban, right? That can be uplifted by this government, and it won't be now like things that's going on doesn't looks like it will stop just because government will uplift this ban. I mean, the issue of corruption, the issue of the systematic failure, and like a guest mentioned, the issue of the chair that they play, the three faces that we have been
Yes.
seeing every day since we were a kid, would definitely not make protesters happy, in my opinion.
Interesting point you make there. Sohana, is that also something that you feel that just unbanning 26 social media platforms will not end what many in Nepal are describing as Gen Z revolution?
I mean, definitely, Gaurav, at this point, it is not just a Gen Z revolution. I think this has turned into something much more greater and wider than just that. This is a movement on its own where it has multiple repercussions against all demographic and not just the young people, not just within Nepal, but outside of Nepal as well. And see, I do not understand exactly what agenda besides within, beyond Nepal, this could be pushing or per se, but in that sense I feel like the youth and the people that came out today were genuinely frustrated with the poor governance in general.
Yes. Okay. Dr. Jaiswal,
and i
as
and
an
i
analyst, Dr. Jaiswal, as an analyst, will KP Sharma Oli, should he step down? There are some voices that seem to indicate that he offered to step down and that he's already ordered an inquiry into the violence and the targeting of children. Will that satisfy the protesters? Yeah, baat ab bahut aage nikal gayi hai. This is, as the students put it or as the protesters put it, it's a revolution for change.
Gaurav, maybe if Prime Minister KP Oli will step down, the things might get calm, but it will not end here. Because as I said, the students demand the change of the leaders who has been in power since decade and they have not delivered. So we don't want KP Oli to be replaced by Deuba and then replaced by Prachanda. We want this whole set of people to be replaced by young leaders. That is one. Second, when we talk about China and all, I think the world should understand that democratic Nepal is in the interest of the democratic countries. If if you stand with Nepal's democracy, freedom of speech, democracy, human rights, and all, I think it's in the interest of the region as well. So I think that is where India and the Western world should come together. Because if we have authoritarian tendencies like KP Oli, who want ban on social media, ban on press and all, I think it's not in the interest of the region. So I think the world has to come to the joint hands.
Very big point you're making. राजेंद्र महातो जी, क्या आपका भी यही सोचना है कि केपी शर्मा ओली अभी चाइना से आए हैं, तियानजिन से आए हैं, शी जिनपिंग से मिलकर आए हैं, तो उनमें कुछ उसी तरह की आदत दिख रही है कि वो सोशल मीडिया को दबा दो, जनता को दबा दो, और वो अब नेपाल की जनता उठ खड़ी हुई है अपने आंदोलन के साथ?
जी बिल्कुल, नेपाल की जनता परेशान है, तबाह है और बिल्कुल फ्रस्ट्रेशन में है, आक्रोश में है। उसी का आज जो प्रदर्शन हुआ है युवाओं के द्वारा, उसी का प्रतीक है। इसलिए परिवर्तन चाहती है यहाँ की जनता, शासन में, विचार में, विचारधारा में, व्यवहार में परिवर्तन चाहती है। यहाँ व्यवस्था परिवर्तन होता है, संविधान परिवर्तन होता है, लेकिन व्यक्ति का जीवन स्तर में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं हो रहा है। तो नेपाल की जनता उससे परेशान है। दैनिक रूप से हजारों लोग देश छोड़ करके, युवा लोग देश छोड़कर बाहर जाना पड़ रहा है, लाखों लोग देश छोड़कर चले गए। तो ये सारा है, इसलिए ये सिर्फ सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर बैन लगा इसलिए ही इतना नहीं है। करप्शन से लेकर कुशासन तक सारी जो अवस्था है सरकार की, जो देश के जनता के प्रति बना रखा है, उसके प्रति आक्रोश है, परिवर्तन की चाहत है। तो जब तक परिवर्तन होगा नहीं, किसी न किसी रूप से होते रहेगा।
General Chauhan, the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, I just want to understand, the army in Nepal remains very powerful and very disciplined, but will they follow illegal orders? Should they get illegal orders from an authoritarian government, or will the army look at this revolution as the students put it, and perhaps the Nepali Congress will cut its losses, or how do you see things pan out?
Gaurav, firstly about the army. I have seen them during the Jan Andolan 2 at the end. They're an extremely conscientious, extremely professional force. And I do not see the army taking any illegal orders at all. They did not take it in 2006, 2007, and they will not take it now. I have full faith in the Nepalese army and its officers that they will lead the Nepalese army to take a stand that is correct and that is ethical for the government of India, for the government of Nepal, and for the people of Nepal. That's the main issue. That's the first issue. How does it pan out? In the next 3 to 4 days, we have to see who's leading this protest. And within the next 3 to 4 days, we also have to see, will Oli get down and say, okay, I'll unblock the social media, I will talk to the people, and I will resign. Now, these are all issues that Oli has to take now. He has to understand that the protests have gone beyond a particular stage. He cannot control them, and he needs to understand their anger. And he needs to show fresh faces. I totally agree. The three old faces are no longer acceptable to the people of Nepal because they've not been able to lead them to any kind of prosperity.
And
the
we'll be
people
tracking
of
the
Nepal
story very,
we'll
very
be looking
closely.
at that, Gaurav.
Yes.
Absolutely.
To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.